Hey guys, my Satsuma Orange tree came in today, and so I'll quickly go over what you need to do to plant or replant your Satsuma Orange tree. Now, my Satsuma Orange tree came in a pot, and sometimes it comes as a bare root. So, depending on if it's a bare root or it comes in a pot, it kind of changes what you need to do. What I'm going to quickly do is I'll go over the highlights very quickly for those of you who only want to know the highlights very quickly, and then I'll go back after I discuss everything very quickly. I'll give you the detailed reasons why of each topic. So, number one, if your tree comes in bare root, meaning no soil and it's been wrapped and then you just see the roots, you need to soak it at least 2 to 6 hours. That's number one. Number two, the type of pot you're going to need. Whether you want to use the existing pot you have if it came as in a pot, or it came in as bare root, you're going to need at least a minimum of 16 to 20-inch pot with at least 4 holes. Number three, the soil. Satsuma orange trees like loomy soil, and it is suggested that you use 1/3 vermiculite, 1/3 perlite, 1/3 peat moss, with sand optional. Pre-wet it, add in a cup or two of citrus fertilizer. Then once you pot it, go ahead and sprinkle 1 cup of azomite on top of the soil. And then you can cover it with mulch. I like to cover it with peat mulch, or pine mulch, I'm sorry. And then water it well. Now, if you don't want to go ahead and use that soil mix by going out and buying all the different combinations, at a bare minimum, use potting soil. That potting soil will be perfect for a pot or for the ground. And you'll still go ahead and mix in the 1 to 2 cups fertilizer, 1 cup azomite, cover it with pine mulch, and then water it well. Number four, for the first couple of weeks that you have this new Satsuma orange tree, you're going to have to water it once every 1 to 2 days until you see new growth. Then from there, you'll just water it on your typical watering schedule when it needs water. And number five, Satsuma orange trees don't need any pruning, but make sure to take out broken branches, diseased branches, or dead branches. Now that I've quickly gone over all the things you need to do, let me go back and give you a detailed reason of why you need to do what you need to do. Number one, I've had fruit and citrus trees delivered to me, 2 or 3 of them every year for the last 5 years. And after not soaking some of them, after soaking some for an hour, some where I soak 2 hours, and some that I soak all the way up to the 6 hour maximum allowed, I've noticed that 2 hours here, for me personally, has been the sweet spot. If I soak it 2 hours, it allows to hydrate the tree and shows new growth a lot quicker than a tree that has not been soaked at all or only soaked 1 hour. Number two, studies have been shown that we need at least 4 holes minimum in a pot in order to allow proper drainage. Studies done through Ohio State University and other universities have shown that 4 holes minimum are needed in order to have proper drainage. Also, for myself, I'm going to go ahead and replant this into an air pot, which is the same thing as a grow pot. And it helps eliminate root bound and root balls and helps naturally prune the roots. And because, fruit trees aren't cheap, and because they're not a seasonal vegetable plant, you want to make sure to give it as much success and opportunities to be successful. And so go ahead and I spend a little bit extra money to make sure that I have air pots for my fruit trees. Now, because my Satsuma tree is going to be a dwarf tree, it's going to be staying about 6 to 8 feet tall. And because it's been grafted onto a different type of root, and it's a different type of tree, it can actually handle temperatures below 20 degrees. And with me being an 8B, this is going to be perfect. I'm going to go ahead and grow it in a pot for the next 2 to 3 years, establish the roots, and then 2 to 3 years from now, I'm going to go ahead and replant it directly into the ground. And I'm going to have a tree that's somewhere between the 6 to 8 foot range, which is pretty manageable. Now, I'm going to go ahead and repot this now. But whether you decide to repot it or you put it into the ground, July, August, that's okay to go ahead and put into the ground and give it enough time to establish itself. Now, For those of you who are going to repot it any other time of the year, you might be getting a tree in the wintertime that's in a dormant stage, which is where typically most of us will be receiving our trees through a lot of nurseries that have trees that are in its dormant period. And when you plant it into the ground, it stays dormant, and then once it wakes up, it starts growing. Now, this type of citrus tree, or most citrus trees, like a little bit of acidic soil, and they like a pH somewhere between 5.5 and 6.5. And so what I'm going to do is the soil mix I have allows me to have acidic soil with a combination of the peat moss and the pine mulch that I cover on top will help kind of lean toward more of the acidic side, which is what I'm looking for. By having the mix that I put together, it allows me to have quick draining loomy soil, but also allows my soil to stay in the pH range of 5.5 to 6.5, which is important, and it allows me not to have to mess around with adding soil acidifier to get the soil to constantly stay at a slightly acidic level. Also, it's important to fertilize your citrus tree on a regular basis. Whether it's in a pot or into the ground, it uses up a lot of nutrients, and at a bare minimum, you're going to need to fertilize at least twice a year, once in the spring and once in the summer. I recommend that you don't fertilize too much in the wintertime, especially as the tree goes dormant. You don't want it to take those nutrients and forget to basically go into its dormant period. So you got to either taper down or not use fertilizer in the wintertime. Number 4, like I said before on the mulch, for my apple trees, I'll use a straw hay mulch, but because I want it more of an acidic soil and keep it acidic without having to use a soil acidifier on a regular basis, I'll be using pine mulch to naturally acidify the soil. And then also, I'll make a circle around my tree with a mulch that gives it a base, circle base around it once it goes into the ground. And I'll leave at least 6 to 12 inches around the root just to make sure that I don't bury the root, because insects and bugs will and rodents will burrow into the root if I keep a mulch covering up the root. Number 5, in-ground watering. You want to go ahead and in the wintertime limit the amount of rain that you give your tree, and especially in my zone in 8B, I'll have plenty of rain as it is, and so I don't have to worry about watering at all. The one thing I will do though is I'll buy a shrub jacket for my tree to keep it warm at least the first couple years until the roots are established. Number 6, on the pruning side, I typically like to prune in late winter or early spring. I don't like to prune in the late fall because I want the tree to go dormant and I don't want it to forget that it needs to go into dormancy. And so I make sure that when I do prune the dead branches, the diseased branches, and the broken branches, that I try to do that in the late summertime and try to avoid any drastic maintenance pruning of my Satsuma Orange tree until late winter, early spring. And then on the fertilizing, like I said before, I'll go ahead and fertilize in the spring and summer. And then I will go ahead and use additional sprays like horticulture oil and dormant spray, along with neem oil and copper fungicide spray on a set schedule, which I will explain a little bit later. And then on the watering, once per week in the ground during the regular season, whether it's in the ground or in a pot, after the first 2 weeks of repotting or planting into the ground, you're going to have to get on a regular schedule, which is typically anytime the first 2 to 3 inches of the soil is dry. And then I will go ahead and later this year, since this is July for me here, I'll go ahead and spray it with horticulture oil and dormant spray in the early fall before this tree is headed toward the dormancy period. And then that is all. I will go ahead and add another video about the spraying schedule with horticulture oil and dormant spray, neem oil, natural fungicide spray, and copper fungicide spray. I will explain those through another video exactly how the spray schedule should work. Thank you very much and have a great day.